You're representing the team. Katie's still here? Oh, hi. Okay, we're back now again. So we're running a little bit behind, so we have to go straight into the next session. And fantastic to have Dr. John Scahill here with us today, and he's representing a wider team, a fantastic team who've been collaborating on the whole area of sustainable development goals, and they've created a special purpose award. So Dr. Carmel Heaney from the Mayo campus, Dr. Katie O'Dwyer, who we were with earlier today from the School of Science, and Dr. Trevor Clohessy, also here from Galway, the Galway campus, School of Business. So thank you. Thanks, John. I'm going to hand over to you. Looking forward to this.
There's a clicker if you want to use that, John. And also, you can stand or sit.
All right, I'll probably stand for
Yeah.
the moment. Okay. Well, first I'd like to thank you, Karina, for having me here. And thank you for running this event. It's a fantastic event, a great resource, and a showcase of what we do, so I think it's fantastic. As you say, I'm here to represent a team, and I've been lucky enough to work with this team over basically since last September, developing a Special Purpose Award certificate in the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, I imagine probably most of you are familiar with that to some extent. Some people will be very familiar with it. But it's a framework that has been around since 2015, and it's getting a lot of traction at a policy level, at a government level, and a lot of professional bodies, Engineers Ireland, for instance, architectural bodies, a lot of bodies from the sector that I'd be from, the construction sector, are looking for alignment now with Sustainable Development Goals. So this project is a Human Capital Initiative sponsored project, so it's under the Higher Ed 4 project. Probably most of you would know that. Was originally applied for through the Connacht Ulster Alliance, so that was GMIT, IT Sligo and LYIT. So effectively the Higher Ed 4 project is now an ATU project, and I was fortunate enough, I put in, I think it was probably in March 2019, they were looking for proposals. I put in a proposal for an idea I had at the time, and I was fortunate enough for it to get funded as part of the big Higher Ed 4 project. So my original aim was to develop a suite of micro-credentials. At the time, I had just become familiar with the concept of, well, micro-credentials going down to one credit. You know, I think we all in the Institute are very familiar with micro-credentials because we just call them special purpose awards of 5 credits, 10 credits. But there's this big drive on now in education to develop micro-credentials. We've always been doing it, but when I first heard about it, I thought, God, that 17 Sustainable Development Goals, we could throw something together, be very interesting, easy way to package them. So I put in a proposal for that. And the initial idea was that you'd have probably 17 individual ones and then maybe a 3-credit capstone. And the idea was that a student would log on to a format and maybe do some sort of a pre-assessment test, and then it would indicate or direct them to what areas they might need to upskill on. As any of you now would know, that was a ridiculously ambitious project to attempt, but anyway, we did get some funding for it. So the final product that we have actually ended up getting is an accredited program that can be undertaken by any students on existing programs in GMIT or indeed across the wider ATU. And we're basically perhaps hopeful that it might also be potentially a MOOC type program, in that it would be offered outside the traditional university registered students, and it's designed to be accessible for anyone from any discipline, so it's designed across disciplines. Self-paced learning. It was so interesting to listen to all the digital experts here today and all the great pedagogy. We, in our own modest way, have tried to incorporate as much of that good stuff in, and the more we hear, the more we will be incorporating it in. Delivery is blended, but it's substantially online. We went away from completely asynchronous because we felt that to give this bite, certainly when we're trialling it, that having a little bit of input would be very important, that little bit of contact with the student. The final format of the program, it's a 20-credit, the full program is 20 credits at level 6. It's 4 5-credit modules. When we did design it originally, we actually looked at developing 17 1-credit modules and a 3-credit capstone, and actually We had actually started doing that, but I was given some friendly advice by the Registrar's Office that if we presented that we might get it back quicker than we were intending, because there are no policies in GMIT at the moment to accredit one-credit modules. The emphasis, the 17 goals, I don't know if you're familiar with sustainability, but it's often viewed through the lens of social, environment and economic. They're the three pillars it's usually looked at. So that's basically people, planet and prosperity or profit. The 17 goals, partnership is really important. The goal number 17 in the Sustainable Development Goals is partnership to achieve the goals. So we decided that we could use this module, this framework, and split it into 4 units. So partnership, people, planet and prosperity are the 4 5-credit modules that go together to give you the Sustainable Development Goal overall programme. The emphasis is on inter and cross-disciplinarity, because sustainability is a problem for every discipline. It's a problem for everyone. It's the greatest, probably, challenge facing humanity in ever, perhaps. The programme is designed around the principles of UDL, and the focus of the programme is on applying the SDGs in the regional context, so that is in the context of Ireland. A lot of people think, when they hear about the Sustainable Development Goals or any kind of development goals, they think of sort of developing countries and that, but this is really about how it works here. So just to introduce the team, so Trevor Clohessy works in the School of Business here. He would have expertise in blockchain, micro-credentials and digital badges. Carmel Heaney is a researcher who has expertise in SDG implementation in healthcare. She would have a nursing background. Katie O'Dwyer is in the marine biology. She would have expertise in UDL, micro-credentials. I'm from a construction, mechanical, electrical background and sustainable low-energy buildings. Mark Kelly is the head of the Sustainability Centre. Mark Garvin is a well-published social scientist as well. Deirdre Garvey is the head of the department in Castlebar. Declan Feeney is also on our team. He's from Sligo IT. And Kevin O'Callaghan from the Department of Environmental Humanities and Social Sciences. He's an outdoor education expert and would have a lot of experience developing sustainability-related programs over the years. So as you can see, we have a very diverse team, and we also got people from Sligo. Now, we did look to Donegal, but we didn't actually get any people directly involved in this, but we are going to keep doing that, because working with people, bringing teams together is how these programs are going to work. The journey, we actually spent 6 months. We had 15 different meetings spaced out by 2 weeks, trying to figure out exactly how to get this to work. I think everyone in the development team has got some qualification in teaching and learning and higher education, varying from certs, diplomas, masters and PhDs. So everyone is committed to that. And when you have experts sitting around tables, you get lots of opinions, and we had to do a lot of circular things. We had to go full circle a few times to end up pretty much where we started in the very beginning, but with a lot more knowledge this time. So we had to look at what was out there already, what's already been involved. We explored doing individual credits. We wanted the assessment strategy to be consistent, constructively aligned, and we were all looking at reverse engineering. We know what we want them to do, go backwards, make sure that we fill that. Part of the Higher Ed 4, there's an instructional design input. So in addition to the great team you have here, on the Higher Ed 4, there's another team working on this particular programme with us, although I do think there will be overlap. We were looking, obviously, at using and developing reusable learning objects, and again, universal design for learning is a key strategy or a key pedagogy. The aim is to provide an introduction to the theory and the applications of the Sustainable Development Goals with a focus on regional impact. Again, we felt it was really important to bring the person, get them involved, see how the Sustainable Development Goals impact them and how it impacts them in the region, because we're all aware of sustainability and, in the bigger picture, and sort of loss of biodiversity and pictures of problems out in the ocean and problems, with supply chains in Russia and problems. But all of these are actually, all the examples we try to use in the teaching material are based locally. So we try to explore all of them through a local lens. So to encourage knowledge and reflection on how the framework can be applied in a local context and encourage implementation of environmentally sustainable living and working practices that support a just transition. I think that's probably the statement that sums up probably the driving force of everyone who was actually involved in developing the programme. So the format is, I'll just flick onto this one. So basically the form, we have 4 modules. The partnership one, which is at the top, it was going to be a capstone, but it's actually a foundation one because you have to do the partnership one first. Then you can do the people, planet and prosperity, and if you do all of them, you get your 20 credit award. If you decide to do a special purpose award just on partnership and people, because maybe that's your background, you're doing social sciences or whatever, or you want to do it on planet because you're doing environmental sciences, you can do that. So we've, there's 4 awards altogether. Each module is designed to be delivered in 5 individual units, and I'll go through the actual content in a minute, because we kept with the notional idea that if there were 5 individual credits, that we'd have a unit there you could just drop out, and if we ever did have a 1 credit system where you could just do an accredited single credit, it would be usable. So that was kind of the design philosophy around each of the units, and then each unit we've, I suppose, invented our own sort of terminology. We have the units, which basically equate to credits, and then there's blocks in the unit. So each unit will have a certain amount of blocks. And we started working with the instructional design team yesterday, and we have kind of now a format, a very, very detailed format for how each block is laid out. So it's repetitive. It involves, I think, all 6 of the learning types. So we're trying to incorporate as much as we've all picked up, and also bring in our disciplinary expertise as well. Assessment is going to be identical in all of them, and we're going to use 2 types. MCQs, basically for each of the 5. It's just a small part, it's just to sort of show that you've gone through that. So there's 5% of each module is an MCQ, and there's 5 units, so that's 5 5 25. The remainder then is 1 reflective piece that has to be completed by the end of the module, which is a piece of work that shows, A, that you've engaged with the material, and the idea is that you create an artifact now that shows that you've engaged with the material, that you understand it, and that you can advocate for the theme, so that you get partnership, or maybe you actually don't get partnership and you don't believe it's a good idea. But if you can justify that in your artifact, then that's what we're looking for. Students can undertake 1 or more of the modules at any time, in addition to their primary qualification. Of course, we had to be cognizant of the fact that if you're already doing a degree and you're busy studying, you're not going to want to take on too much. So that kind of explains why we went for level 6 and 5 credits. So, we think it's probably reasonable enough to do 5 credits on top of your 60. I mean, it's still a challenge, but, we're trying to make it as easy to study and as engaging as possible. Just repeating everything, all the really great stuff that Tony and Sean spoke about before. You must do the partnership module first, so that gets you set up, because then you've got the framework. You can complete 1 or all of the 3 other ones. There's 4 certificates available. The aim, up to yesterday, was to have digital badges. Once you do the 5%, the MCQs, you get your digital badge, but I've just been told that maybe the policy in ATU on digital badges is about to take a big change. So if that's the case, that's probably going to impact this, but if not, we will probably go for the digital badge module unless it changes. The material will be presented on Moodle in 5 units. Each unit will be self-contained. There'll be a lot of time spent on signposting and explaining precisely how to get through it. There will be detailed information on how to complete the assessment provided up front. It'll actually be one of the opening, we'll be explaining why it's important, but also what you have to do to engage with the material, and what you need to do to pass it. We're hoping that the student work will form a repository or a database at the end, because the final assessment, so the assessment 5 MCQs, the reflective piece, I mean, we're thinking it could be a poem, it could be a play, it could be a series of photos, it could be an essay. We were thinking it could be a dance, but we're not sure exactly how we'd interpret that one. But it's open to the student to interpret and sort of engage with it in as well as they can. And also, interestingly, yesterday we came up with another, well, we articulated another thing that we hadn't realised is the reflective piece could be just, you know, articulating your journey. When I started studying about sustainability, I thought it was all to do with energy, and now I know I shouldn't buy my shoes in ... You know, so it could be that. So there will be ample instruction in when you start out how to do it. So people could do it all along, and they could just start writing notes. It could be a reflective journal, outlining a journey where you've gone from there to there, and you obviously need to signpost that you've picked up and you've observed what makes it up. But at the end, you know, you get to be critical and make your statement. To keep it simple, once you register, you have a year. Like if you haven't finished it, by the time the repeat of the following, say September comes, bang, you're off and you have to register again. Nothing gets carried over. That just keeps it really simple. At the moment, we're aiming to provide it free to all students because Higher Ed 4 has additional place funding, and that has been used to develop the programme, so the people that were developing with me had some time to do it through Higher Ed 4. And the AP funding itself will actually fund the delivery of it. So we're hoping then that anyone who wants to do it, if they register and they complete it, then the AP funding will actually cover the actual lecturer's times involved. I'll give you a bit more on that. So this is just an idea about the content. So partnership, this would be the first module you'll be doing. An introduction to sustainability framework. So that's just to sort of, for anyone who doesn't know, introduce the concept of sustainability, the terminology, the history, why it's important, how it's come along, where it's come from. So there'll be an element of sort of videos, videos of different people. There'll be links to existing resources. Any of you who have probably looked at the Sustainable Development Goals recently will see that there's, on the library, there's a sort of a massive set of resources, hundreds of links, and there's loads of resources on the SDGs. There isn't so much on the regional application of them. That's why we're going to try and tie this in. We're going to try it into local examples. So we'll be talking to local people, you know, leaders of the county councils, leaders of the Climate Action Office, people whose responsibility it is to engage with this in the local level. And by that, we're hoping to sort of get students involved, you know, being interested in being actively involved in it and seeing how their role in this can develop. Introduction then, of course, to the Sustainable Development Goals kind of flows on from that. And then the next section is one unit, and it's the Sustainable Development Goals in context. So once you understand sustainability concepts, the SDGs, it's then important to stand back a little bit and look at the limitations as well. The Sustainable Development Goals are a great framework. They point you in a great, you know, they're a great guidance, but they're not without their flaws, they're not without their criticisms. You know, there's a lot of issues with them. Sometimes they're used as metrics. Some countries score really high on the SDG thing. It doesn't necessarily, like, you know, some of the Nordic countries will score very high because they have an incredibly high standard of living and there's a lot of equity there, but it wouldn't necessarily, in a bigger picture, if we all lived like that, we'd probably need 8 planets to support that particular style. So there are limitations, and that needs to be just pointed out as we go through it. So then, to keep with the 5 structure, SDG 16, Peace, Justice and Strong Institutions, is then the next unit. And SDG 17, Partnership for Achieving the Goals, is the next unit. So each of those, we will have the engagement in each of them will be the same, approximately. We're trying to design it so it will be about the same. And SDG 16 and 17 will be presented in the format that we'll be hoping to do all the other ones as well. People, no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, they're the ones that apply to people. So again, it'll be the same sort of structure. There'll be some lectures, local applications. You'll be asked then maybe to read 2 papers, compare them, consider them, collaborate, and maybe think about in the bigger picture over the, so when you've done all the pre-recorded stuff and you've read all the material, you can then attempt the MCQs, you can repeat them. We are, basically it'll probably be 40 questions or maybe 50 questions, and we're hoping to have a bank of, I don't know, maybe 200 or something like that, so it kind of keeps it changing all the time. Planet, again, clean water, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land. I mean, again, you can see there's a huge amount of areas there where you can easily link or go into that and bring that into a regional context. Prosperity, affordable and clean energy, a huge issue, and particularly it's on, every day you turn on the television now, we're seeing some more about how far away from affordable and clean energy we are. Decent work, economic growth, industry innovation, reduced inequality, and sustainable cities. So they're on that. So the pedagogy, it's designed to be self-paced, and you can do it as you want through. Now, we're also hoping to embed in it some places where we can get permission from the students to sort of follow on, because we'd like to use this as a research project going forward for getting some information in relation to students' journey on sustainability and on the Sustainable Development Goals. I see I have only a few minutes left. I don't have any slides left. So the programme is also aimed at any lecturers who want to say, if you're doing something and you want to refer to SDG 6 or SDG 13, you can dip in and it will be a regional application of it. Of course, it'll be open to lecturers, and we'll be hoping that it'll be open to them as an open resource. They can just dip in and dip out of the material that they want. As I said, it's aimed at informing a longitudinal study. So just in relation to the funding model, AP funding is at the rate of €2,500 per 60 credits delivered. That means it's about €208 per 5 credits. So the model that we were looking at is 5 minutes per student per week on this. The only interaction they have in this, now this is quite a generous model in the moment. If you've got small numbers, it's not too bad. If you've got hundreds, this becomes, from an institutional point of view, it's going to be very labour intensive. But I suppose we're hoping that any sort of time made on this will allow us to go back to the box and start developing more material. The interaction, the only real interaction that a lecturer will have on this is, as I say, we wanted it to be pretty much completely asynchronous, but we stayed away from that. So when the material is being delivered, we would be expecting whoever's in charge of the module to sort of observe the blogs and moderate if necessary, but just keep an eye on it just to make sure that it's going. There's going to be sort of contribute once, reply twice kind of approach sort of in terms of the blogs and that. So we just think there needs to be time allowed for the lecturer to do that. And also, because the final assessment on each of the modules is, very open, you could have some student writing, a haiku and thinking that that's right. And maybe it would be perfect. But I think the lecturer would need to preview the haiku and say, okay, that's so good, that works. But so we do think you need interaction. So a person is going to get a chance to do a draft of their final assessment, send it in, get a fairly comprehensive critique, get it back, and then maybe they might need a little bit more tweaking, but that's it. And that's kind of what the 5 minutes per week per student is. I think that's it.
Great. Thanks. I don't know if it's a question or maybe a comment. It was great work. It's fantastic. A couple of things came to mind when you were doing this yesterday. Kevin presented on a fantastic resource that's been in development for a while on the 17 SDGs. I don't know, are you familiar with it? It's a learning resource that's been developed, and I think it would be worth collaborating. I know he's been working with Mark Kelly, but it might be something that would be of use. You might be familiar with it.
Is it the one with all the lectures where everyone does the little introduction to each of them?
Yes.
Yeah. That will be probably in the opening section of this as a kind of a, it's an introduction. It will be an introduction to it. Yeah. No, that's probably going to be on the front page, because it covers so many different lecturers and so many different.
Yeah, maybe collaborate with Kevin on that.
Yeah.
The other thing is just when you're talking about the assessment, it's just it's the idea of the dance or the poem or whatever will go. But I was thinking this award, you should be thinking about an e-portfolio, that's what they feed into, and their output will be, they'll have an output from each of those goals.
Yeah.
But showcase it in an e-portfolio, and it could be one bit, could be a podcast, it could be
exactly.
There's multiple media that they could use, but using the e-portfolio as the central capstone assessment piece that all the outputs feed into, the 5 credits. It's
Yeah.
crying out for that.
That, yeah,
integration.
that is, yeah.
That is the ultimate
Yeah.
assessment package.
Yeah.
For, but we can talk to you again about that.
Yeah, no, that actually did come up yesterday when we were talking about that, and
And we have licensing for students for you to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, if you wanted to.
yeah, no,
go that road.
we did discuss that yesterday, and we all felt that would be really a good way to do it, because it means it's a way of recording it as it goes forward, and it's, yeah.
Yeah. I think so. It would be fab, and then
Yeah.
we would have something really tangible
Yeah.
when they come out of the programme. But thanks very much. Is
we're
there any other questions? Mark has some
sorry,
questions.
yeah.
Sorry.
Fabulous, absolutely great, and I'm really excited to see it. I have a ton of stuff here, but I'll only ask a few stuff maybe Nadia afterwards. But just with regards to the assessment structure, following on, I totally agree, e-portfolio is a great suggestion for it.
Yeah.
It lends itself open to what's called a synoptic assessment approach, where one assessment could be used to meet 2 or more learning outcomes, possibly from different modules, which is really good to encourage programmatic assessment, which is something that Justin was talking about this morning, or sorry, Philip was talking about this morning with regards to academic integrity and assessment. But other bits and pieces, you may be familiar with the National Forum have big professional development courses for staff, and they all have a similar structure. They're all 1 credit, or pseudo 1 credit, 25 hours is what they're meant to be, and I can see a lot of similarities between what you were describing here. But they have a triad structure for managing the assessment. So as part of the assessment structure, as part of the course structure, they set up students in groups of 3, and it's the peer interactions and the peer reflections that they end up doing that manage the assessment, because the UDL badge, which I would be most familiar with, they've had 1,300 participants at any one time, and you just do not have the staff capacity to go through 13 different assessments. And what they do for their particular assessment is they talk about how they're going to change their practice with regard how they're going to integrate UDL into their practice. Their stuff is going for how they're going to integrate SDGs, and the teaching of SDGs into their modules could be absolutely superb. And I'm sure now after this, I promise. But the other point is, the challenge you may have is you're going to have staff in Limerick or Letterkenny who are going to be using Blackboard, and students who are going to be using Blackboard. There is a particular technique where you can embed your Moodle course into their Blackboard, so they don't have to log into Moodle. They don't even know they're logging into Moodle. They're logging into their Blackboard course, but they will actually get your content and see your content, so you'll have the best of both worlds.
Well,
Talk about that again, Mark.
thank you. You might just to finish this, the similarity. Yes, the digital badge on UDL, for instance. There's a few of us from this program actually working with the National Forum on developing a digital badge for education for sustainability in the exact same. And we started out with the template. We're going to change it, but yeah, lovely. Okay.
It'll be modelled on the UDL one, so which is great. Hi, Mark. Yes.
Sorry, Mark.
John, thanks for that. Is it envisaged that on-site, in-person field trips would be used for any of the modules being developed for this initiative?
We would like that. We haven't figured out exactly how to incorporate that, and that ties into something else in relation to the triadic thing. Because we were trying to keep this free so you can log in or log out at any time. Some people might log in September, some people might decide not to do it until January. It's getting a cohort, and that's kind of why we wanted a sort of bit of interaction or a bit of oversight of the blogs, because it's going to be, if you don't have cohorts, we're still trying to figure out exactly the times. So I think field trips would be absolutely ideal. We will probably be advertising the field trips as suitable for this, but I don't know if we'll tie them in because of the sort of the range that we're looking at.
It's a tremendous PR opportunity as well, and outreach, developing these short modules, short courses, and even the other stuff that's been spoken about earlier on with the 3D cameras and their use of 360 cameras, getting that local footage of the different things and embedding it into these courses.
We could do some virtual tours.
Yeah. Absolutely. Next year we're continuing the project and we're open for all sorts of ideas. So it's a space that there's lots going to be happening in, and Mark Kelly is already, he's working with us on this. So I think hopefully the sky's the limit. Thank you.
And there's a group across the country that's engaging with Mark on that national badge. I think your colleague in DCU is tied in with us.
That's right, yeah.
So you'll be able to meet later anyways, where
Yeah.
so you'll be able to chat
Sure.
on more
Okay.
SDGs.
Thank you.
Okay,
Cheers.
thanks a million. And next up, will we take a minute break? You know, maybe we'll just take 5 minutes.